G'day. Today we're doing a repair on a Holden Colorado 2.8 litre turbo diesel, and it's got the 6-speed transmission in it. 170,000 on it. And what's happening, the shift between third and fourth, there's a bit of a shudder. Also the torque converter clutch is pulsing especially when it warms up. You'll see the tacho revs just moving up and down slightly. So we've had the scan tool on there. We couldn't really get any transmission codes or engine codes out of it. So what we're suspecting, it's the transmission Electro hydraulic control module. It's basically, what that means is there's a little plate on the valve body that has little switches on it, and sometimes those switches get damaged, the rubber seals flatten out, lose pressure, or the little discs wear out, and they can get contaminated with fine metallic debris if they haven't been serviced for a while. This one, we believe, has not or ever been serviced in 170,000 kilometres. Now the 6L50, 6L80, 6L45 as well, same family of transmission. They've got a little sleeve here that links the external electronics or cable to the mechatronics in the transmission. So we're going to remove all that. Make sure you clean that as best as you can, and also any other loose dirt around there. It'll just be a lot more pleasant to work on. Well, it's pretty dark in it. The filler plug is over here on the driver's side, or the right hand side of the transmission, and that's what it looks like. You just have to pop this little bit out. That's like a little locator pin, and then you'll be able to wriggle that seal out. Okay, we're going to remove the valve body. Now to start with, we've got to disconnect this cable here, or this plug, from the transmission. So what we do, there's a little locking pin there, you can see it, you've got to take that out. There we go. Take it right out, there it is there. And then you press this little button there, and that's a fork that goes into that sleeve. You press that and just pull it down. Sometimes I'm doing it with one hand, but you need to just push, just so it's pushing up, just so you can slide that out. It's because it hasn't been removed for a while, it'll get stuck in there, and we don't have a lot of room here, as you can see. It's all confined on these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen this off first, and then the whole sleeve will come out with that plug. I'm going to replace that sleeve, but it'll come out with it. A little bit of tension on there if it won't come out easily, and it should just slide out like that. And now I can put my hand in there and just push that little tang, and that should just pull that whole sleeve and everything out with the plug. It will manoeuvre out. You can see it's come out a little bit there. And take this plug out, and now that'll just slide out a lot easier. There we go. And now that valve body is clear of any plugs or anything. Good idea just to remove this detent spring where it locates on the different gear positions. And also, if you have a look, all the heads on those bolts with the on there, a little bit hard to see, but it's an eTorx Plus socket, special type of socket. That's it there. just loosen the middle one all the way and just put it in a couple of threads, just so when we take the rest of it out, the whole valve body doesn't drop down. Okay, now we've let it drain out a little bit. It's still got one bolt here holding it. You can see it's all flexible there. Just hold that up, take that off. And it'll be located on 2 dowel pins as well, so it might not drop out as easily as you got. Yep, there we go. You can see the little bridge seals, they're between the valve body and the case, and there's also one over here and one right up the front here. Now here we are on the Sonax website, and you can see all the locations of the various clutches where you can air pressure test the case while it's still in the vehicle. And we've got the clutch and brake gear application chart. We've got the speed sensors here. We're going to take off these bolts here. All these. Disconnect the range sensor here. You need to take out that little locking plug out first, screwdriver, and then you press this, and that will help release it. You can see where the little lock is up here. And then we just press that, and that'll release that plug. Just jiggle it off gently. There we go. This one here just slides over that little housing. And that can just sit there like that. Or you can actually remove it. On another video, I show how I actually open these up, and you can flush all that fine metal out of there if you're having sport shift issues with the selector. When you're doing jobs like this, it's always good to compare the length of the bolts. Sometimes it is critical. On these it isn't, they're all the same. But it's critical to not put a longer or shorter bolt where it shouldn't be. Now this is just located on a couple of dowels. You can just slowly and gently just remove that. There we go. You can already see, well, put it down gently. You can already see all that fine metal accumulated there where those little pressure switches are. If you have a look here, we've got like a little dowel guide, and when you're putting it on, you need to actually slide it onto that first and then onto here. You can't just push it on from this angle, it has to come on that way. And there we go. You can see all the little pressure switches there, and you can see that they are contaminated. These seals flatten out as well. These filters can get blocked up as well. But what we're going to do is we're going to take these seals out here, because these pressure switches are critical in the operation of the transmission. Now before we go ahead and do any work on it, it's a good idea to just measure the resistances of the solenoids there. And today we've got, it's about 28 degrees here. That one, or what have we got, 24.8. And these ones all along here should be about 6 ohms. Got 6.2, which is alright. 6.1 or 6. 6. That one's the same as this one over here. 6.2. Oh. 6. And there's one on the other side here. Alright, now bench testing them cold or at room temperature is just a rough guide. Ideally you'd want to have this warmed up to about 60-70 degrees and do the same test. Quite often the solenoids will fail under heat. With this particular vehicle, the issue was that jumping in and out of gear, or the torque converter clutch was cycling or applying and disengaging constantly when it was warm, and there was also that rush shift as well. You want to always be careful of that little fork there, that you don't knock it off or get anything damaged to it. And now we're going to pop out all these seals here. I can actually feel that they're quite hard. Now I've got this well-worked screwdriver, hasn't got any sharp edges on it. This is the one that I do a lot of work with. And we just basically push that rubber in. It's like a little, sort of looks like a top hat. And the bottom of that seal will be caught inside a little groove. There we go. You just have to work it slowly around until that seal pops out. Sometimes it will get stuck in there. There we go. And that's what it looks like. You can see the little, that goes in under a step there. And now I've got an old dentist pick, which is pretty handy to pull these out. And I'm just going to pull out that little pressure disc there. Now I've got to get in because it's actually under that, it's underneath that groove. So I've got to get in under the groove and flick it out. There we go. Oh, there we go. A little bit stuck. Oh, there we go. Oh, there we go. Flew out. And we take out that little piece as well, because we're going to wash that and blow it out. We don't want to lose that. And you can see the flat bit goes up towards the disc. I actually damaged it a little bit, and it has taken a funny shape there from working all that time. And what happens, that fine material or debris gets stuck under there and then earths out the contact, or even doesn't allow that little pressure disc to move up and down. That's one thing. And another thing is these seals. They flatten out or they harden, and then they can't seal properly. Especially when they warm up, they'll end up leaking pressure there. Take all the rubbers out first. I might need to get a pointier tool there just to get under that, just so I always try and not damage these discs. If sometimes you can just wash it and reuse it if it's still got its flat shape. If it hasn't, then it's better to replace it. Doesn't want to come out. There we go. That little tool there. It just sits under that. And you actually need to bend that little disc to be able to get it out. But be careful you don't damage those little contacts in there when you're doing that. So do be gentle. And it is a little bit fiddly. Come out. we go. You don't mix these up as well because sometimes they're a little bit different. It's just a good habit not to mix things up. You can later examine it, and if they all look the same, you can mix and change. So now I'm going to just use some solvent and try and wash it out and blow it out as best as I can. Important not to also use full air pressure. If you've got about probably 30-50 psi pressure, I wouldn't go full pressure. I've just got some clean solvent there now. I'll just give it a bit of a squirt in there. Make sure you check all those filters that they haven't got a tear in them or anything like that. And this whole mechatronic, TEHCM they call it, is quite an expensive unit. That's why we're trying to do this repair on it. A lot cheaper to repair it. Now I've got about 50 psi pressure there. We're just going to blow it. I'll squirt with some solvent. Air on its own is not going to clean it out. You need some sort of carrier, which is the liquid, to clean it out properly. So you might have to do that a few times. This tray was clean when I started. You can see how much I've got magnets under the tray there. I like to see how much muck I've cleaned out. And there even are a few little larger flecks there. And what that actually is, that's fine metallic debris. And what happens, that gets magnetized in the solenoid, and that's what actually creates a lot of the problems in these. It just moves around in there. It can't demagnetize itself or flush itself out. Clean. You can get these kits here to actually recondition these little pressure switches. You can see that they'll actually do the 6L45, 6L50, 6L80, 90, the Gen 1 6T70 and the 6T75. I don't think we have those in Australia anyway, but over in the States and overseas they do. We mainly have the 6L50 and the 6L80. Wash all these and put them all back in their respective spots. And when you're putting it in, make sure you haven't got those teeth facing up. They've got to be facing down, and they'll locate around those three little contacts. Like your last one. Make sure they're sitting in there properly. Oh, there we go. Sometimes gravity is your friend. Now we reach into our kit, and we've got the new discs. And when you're putting these in, you actually fold them and you have to tuck it in under that. It's hard to see there, but there is a little groove there where that rubber seal sits on, and this has to sit in that groove as well. You can see that's a new disc, and you want to just bend it like that as you're pushing it in, and it'll help get it started in that groove. And I've pushed it in under there, and now you've got to just work it. And in the kit you have this little tool, and that helps you push it in. You've got the heel and the toe, and you just use that to slowly work its way in there and tuck it in under that groove. And you try and not do it too forcefully, or you'll damage that little disc. You'll put a kink in it. There we go. Just go right around that groove. And that's gone in quite well. And now we need a rubber seal. You can see there's quite a few in the kit. That's what they look like. And they're a lot more rubbery than those. And probably, if you measure it, it's probably a little bit higher too. So the old one's probably flattened out a bit. Now in the kit, you have this little tool. And you'll notice it's got like a little flange there, a wider bit. That goes in there like that. And because the seal is going in, this little step here goes into that groove. You need to push that in here, like so. Work it into that tool. Then we get this tool. You can see it's got a, won't focus, it's too shiny. It's got like a little step there, and that helps push that seal into the tool. Just work it in there, otherwise sometimes you can end up cutting it, or even get it started like that. And that should just push in there. There we go. You can see that. Hopefully it hasn't cut it. I don't think it has. You'd see a little split or a nick out of it. And now what we do, we place that into the switch there. Press it down firmly, try and get it pretty central. And then we're going to push this plunger that's going to push that rubber back out. And hopefully that step will land in that groove. Just turn it a little bit just so it seats properly. And then I'm just going to support that and slowly push that plunger in. Now it's fairly uneven, and you want to make sure, like I mentioned earlier, you don't break that fork when you're putting that in. There we go, it's in. It's not in properly. One thing I probably forgot was to put a little bit of oil on there. That would have made it slide through the tool a lot better. Now we just give that a bit of a wriggle. Just make sure it's seated properly in that groove. And that looks good. Push the rubber right around. Just make sure that that little flange on that rubber has gone into that groove. And there we go. Now I've got 3 more to go. And the last one. It's gone into the groove, and then I just push on that little pointy bit there that hasn't gone in, and just slowly push the corners in, and then it won't get damaged. It should just pop in by itself. And you don't just force it in, otherwise you can damage that little disc. There we go. And we just run right around, make sure it's seated evenly all the way. Visually have an inspection of it, make sure you haven't got a kink or anything in it. And I've got those 2 rubbers in, and I've got the last one there. A little bit of oil on there. It's all in nicely there. Just rotate that around, make sure it'll go in. We just push it. As we're pushing the plunger in, we're pulling the other sleeve, the outer sleeve up. And there we go. Whoop. And you just have to double check, make sure it's gone into that groove. There we go. You can see all the little plates are new. The rubber's all gone in nicely there. Fully reconditioned. Ready to rock and roll again. Now here I am on the Sonex website, and it actually explains to you how to tighten the EHCM or TEHCM back on there, and gives you the torque settings as well. Now if you couldn't follow that explanation, basically what it means is you put all the bolts in just loose. We actually bring them up to almost where they're tightening, and these two bolts that are pushing the whole TEHCM that way, you do them up first, and then by just applying a little bit of pressure you do the rest of the bolts up. We tighten them all up to 70 inch-pound or 8 Newton metre. All torqued up. Now don't forget to put in the range sensor plug. Get it around like there. And that just pushes in. Just stops that cable from fluttering around. Don't forget to put the little locking pin in. That one. Click, click. Your speed sensors, put them back on. We are going to replace the seals there. You have a seal kit. You can see they're probably flattened out a little bit. If you're prying them off, just be careful you don't wreck the surface. And there's one on the case there, and they come in a kit. Like that. You can see one corner's got a bigger hole over here, and you just push that in evenly and gently till it crushes down. When you do that up to the case, it'll actually press down on that seal and seal better. It'll actually spread that little tube out. And that one. I can feel it's much more pliable than the other one, so it's probably going to seal a lot better. The last one, that one there, sits up in the case here. Okay. And that valve body is now ready to be put back in. When you're putting it in, make sure you align that little range sensor there. And from memory, I did actually record what all these little pressure ports are there. If you choose to do an air pressure test on the clutch packs, just be aware that there's going to be a lot of oil spitting back at you when you do that. And you'll notice on the top of the valve body you have two little dowel pins that locate as well. Line it up. Yep. We tighten those up to 100 inch-pound, or that's probably about 13 Newton metre. And it will go up pretty hard because those seals are actually getting squashed up against there, so they seal. Now we need to put the case connector in. There's the old one there and the new one. Smear a bit of oil on it, and if you see there's a little pin there, and that pushes in at about 530. As you're pushing the case connector in, you've got to actually push it fairly hard, and then we'll just slide up that fork and that holds it from popping out. Do not force this, it should just slide in nice and easily. Now what happens, the rubber, the three rubber seals, the tension of the rubber is actually trying to push that sleeve out. So you've got to really push hard. I've actually just got it started, but just to show you how easily that clip should go in, it should just slide in like that. And that just clips in like that. The plug there, we're just going to put a bit of WD-40 in there. And the same thing, as you're pushing that in, you got to remember that little slot's at about 530, and just keep tension on it, and as you wind it down, that'll pull it in. It's just in, and then I just push, keep a tension on it, and pull that down until you hear the click. There we go, that's locked in. And if it had the little locking pin, you can put that back in as well. You can see it's got like a little T. You just line up that T. And there we go, it's in place. Now's a good time to check your work. And if you notice here, that's lined up with that pin. But you'll notice we haven't put the detent spring back in. Always try and get that little roller there in the middle of those teeth. It'll wear a lot better. Double check your work, check your plug, everything's been tensioned up, little forks up, plugs in. We're at the stage now where we can put the filter in. The Colorados have a slightly different filter to the Quips and the Commodores, so make sure you've got the correct filter. You can see the magnet's got a lot of rubbish on there. That would have been circulating right through the transmission. And what we like to do is when we clean that, we'll leave it up on that little bump there, just so that magnet can work top and bottom. And we'll also, because given the oil is so dark in this one and so much fine metallic debris, we'll add a neodymium magnet to it as well. Pan's nice and clean. We've got the magnet up on the ridge. Just make sure it doesn't hit anything or is in the way of anything or too close to the solenoids. And you can see we're going to put a neodymium magnet there up on its edge as well. The pan seal is rubber. You can reuse them, but because it's rubber, it can flatten out as well, so it's up to you. We're going to replace this one. And because the transmission is, filling point is right above the exhaust, I'm going to pre-fill this, probably, I don't know, I'll put a few litres in there. I've pre-filled it with the Tritech low viscosity full synthetic fluid, 3 litres, will fit in the pan. Don't put any more in. Don't fill it right up, because what will happen when you put the filter and the valve body, it'll take up that space and it'll overflow the sides there. Filter, like I mentioned earlier, make sure you've got the right one. That the Colorados have a little, the space is a little bit longer on them. And now we can put the pan back on. A little bit awkward to put on, you can see a little bit spilt over. And now we're just going to put all the bolts in, and then we can do it up. All the bolts are in. And now we just start it up just for a few seconds, just to pump that oil into the transmission, because you're not going to be able to put the whole amount in there. Okay, so we just briefly start it. And that's long enough. We can put another 3 litres of fluid in. We can keep the motor running, and we've got to warm this up to 30 degrees. We've got about 7 litres in there, and we can keep the motor running now. Select through the gears.
Put another litre in.
You know, when it warms up, it'll start coming out. It's still under 30 degrees. Got about 7 litres in there now, and we're just going to try and warm it up till it gets to 30 degrees. It should be just trickling out. So we've got it to 30 degrees, a little bit over.
We just want a thin stream coming out of there.
We've got it to 31 degrees.
And we just want a thin stream like that.
Don't forget to tighten that up and push the little locking pin on the filler there. Wipe up any oil. Double check your work. Make sure you've got your locking pin there on that. I don't think, some vehicles come without it. If it's there, it's a good idea to have it. While you've got it up, good idea to just check your transfer case fluid level, check your unis, check your rear diff, check for anything out of the ordinary, any rubbers, exhaust leaks, that sort of thing. There we go. I'll just take this for a run now and we'll see how it's behaving 3/4 shift. Just back from a road test. I probably didn't get it hot enough to fully test the torque converter clutch from cycling, but the 3/4 shift is definitely changing normally now. There's no shudder. It was doing a shudder every time. It just probably needs warming up, going for a longer run to see if that torque converter clutch solenoid is still cycling. If that problem's still there, then you probably need to look at doing a pull out of the transmission and going through. The clutch plates are probably glazed or something along those lines. The oil in this one was very dark, and the seals were hardened and some of them were flattened out. So more than likely the other seals are in a similar sort of condition. Anyway, I hope that's helped. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Any comments or questions, leave them in the section below. And don't forget to throw us a beer if any of this information has helped. We do appreciate a beer. A beer definitely is a nice feeling for us, and much appreciated, and keeps us motivated to make more videos. Thank you for watching.